Welcome to the Invite Health podcast, where our degreed healthcare professionals are excited to offer you the most important health and wellness information you need to make informed choices about your health. You can learn more about the products discussed in each of these episodes and all that Invite Health has to offer at www.invitehealth.com/podcast. First-time customers can use promo code podcast at checkout for an additional 15% off your first purchase. Let's get started.
I know many people in the healthcare field because by profession originally I was a pharmacist. Since then I've evolved. So I have a lot of friends who are nurse practitioners and medical doctors and pharmacists, and a lot of them are telling me they're burnt out. And the others, they seem to be burnt out. So burnout is a real thing, burnout syndrome. It's a work-related condition. It's when you have way too much work, way too much of a workload, and you're fatigued from it. And there's like really a lot of stress. So right now with COVID-19, all these people working in the hospitals and seeing clients, it's burning them out. So I looked into burnout in medical doctors. That's a good group to look at because they have so much stress on them. So I found a recent study from Europe looking at 637 oncologists. This was from 19 European countries. 72% were at super high risk for burnout, and the rest were at somewhat a risk of a burnout syndrome. 44% of the doctors were at high risk for emotional exhaustion. I don't blame them. 29% for depersonalization. Depersonalization is where you feel like physically numb and emotionally numb and you can't feel other people's pain, etc. And over 47% felt like they were not accomplishing anything. That's called reduced personal accomplishment. And you got to figure the stress on an oncologist must be terrific. When I was a pharmacist in Manhattan, I had some pharmacies in Manhattan years ago. I was very good friends with a pediatric oncologist that worked in a hospital in Uptown Manhattan. And one night we were having a beer. We typically met once a month and had like dinner and a beer. He told me he was so burnt out he couldn't take it anymore. He said day in and day out, talking to the parents about the children and then watching the children. So he told me he was moving to Ireland and opening a pub. Now that's a valid solution. I've been to Ireland. I've been to their pubs. But, not everybody's going to pick up and move to Ireland and open a pub. I felt burnt out once. I was truly burnt out. I was in pharmacy school. I did have a couple of scholarships, but I still worked because I helped my mother pay for her mortgage. I mean, I worked all the time. I worked on my days off. I worked evenings. I worked on vacations. And I was really burning the candle, not at both ends, but like at both ends and in the middle, because I had a fantastic social life and I played sports and I studied like there was no tomorrow. And here's how I felt, because I had the classic case of burnout, but it's not permanent. You take care of it. I was so exhausted, I couldn't even think anymore. I didn't enjoy anything. Everything felt flat and disinteresting. I didn't feel other people's pain. I was like emotionally distant. So at some point, it was like that song with Alan Jackson, It's 5 o'clock somewhere. At a certain point, I just said, you know what? I'm done. I'm taking a couple of days off. I'm going to relax. I'm going to sleep. I'm going to go see my friends. I'm going to go outside and do some walking and enjoy, some physical activity. And it worked. But don't forget, I was in my early 20s. It's a lot easier to recuperate when you're in your early 20s. So over the course of this episode, I'll tell you about some, what really goes on when you're burnt out, but also really safe and effective solutions to help you cope and recover and get your energy back. So welcome to my episode, Burnout. Here's how to feel better. And like I said, I'm going to explain what it means when you're burnt out, how you feel, according to all the research. I'm going to give you all these solutions. My name's Jerry Hickey. I'm a nutritional pharmacist. I'm also the senior scientific officer over here at Invite Health. Thank you for tuning into today's podcast episode. You can find all of the episodes. We have way over 400 episodes at this point for free wherever you listen to podcasts, or just visit invitehealth.com/podcast. Please subscribe and leave us a review. You can also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Invite Health. All the information on this episode is linked at the episode description, so I really want to get going here because there's a lot of important things to say. Now, burnout syndrome, it's defined as a three-dimensional syndrome related to work usually. And it's really a combination of things that cause terrible stress and fatigue that they just overwhelm you. So the three dimensions of burnout syndrome include emotional exhaustion. You feel like you've lost empathy for other people. You get upset easily. You anger easily. I mean, you've had it. You've hit the wall. Then there's depersonalization, and I have to tell you, that's a rotten feeling. You experience emotional numbness, physical numbness. You know, your responses, your senses to the world around you, it's just like zero. You feel disconnected from people emotionally. And like I said, everything is flat. Everything is like not interesting. There's nothing you're interested in. You lose empathy. You can't feel other people's pain. People complain about emotional issues, memory issues, cynicism. Some people become somewhat cynical. So when this happens, you also have a reduced sense of personal accomplishment. You just don't feel like your job is worthwhile, like you're accomplishing anything, like you're not doing any good for anybody. It happens. There might be a feeling of incompetence, or that you just can't be effective. Now, a lot of burnout really has to do with experiencing chronic stress and becoming physically exhausted. Too much work, not enough time for exercise, you're not getting any outdoor activities, you're not seeing your friends, you're not enjoying. So, exhaustion. A clear sign of burnout, you just feel tired beyond all time. You just have this sense of not having any energy, of being completely shot, drained, spent. You could pick the adjective. I mean, it really affects you. It really affects your life. You lack motivation. When you no longer have that motivation for your work, there's a good chance you're experiencing burnout. And you find it's like you're dragging yourself throughout your workday. And like I said, you can have negative emotions like cynicism, which, frustration's part of it. Like what you're doing doesn't matter much. You feel disillusioned with it. You feel like you're becoming pessimistic when you're not normally pessimistic. Like I'm a total optimist. It's impossible to cure my optimism. So I didn't really feel that pessimistic when I had burnout, but man, it was tough. Cognitive problems, because when you're burnt out and you're stressed, it's hard to pay attention, it's hard to concentrate, and this can affect your ability to solve problems and make decisions and get your work done on time. And you'll see that there's like a slip in your job performance. I mean, if you could compare what you're doing now when you're burnt out to what you did like 6 months before, there's going to be a difference. Plus, a lot of people who are burnt out, they don't take care of themselves. They're eating junk food, or they're not eating enough food, and they're not going to bed on time and getting enough sleep. Maybe they're drinking a lot of alcohol or smoking. They're not working out. I mean, it's real. It's real. The effects are real. And your tolerance is down to zero. Everything's getting under your skin. So obviously, if you could get a change of venue, if you could go away on vacation, like, to the Bahamas and rest on the beach for 3 days, that will really help you get over your burnout. But most people just can't pick up and do that. They have kids, or they're taking classes, or work is too important right now and they can't leave because they're taking care of COVID-19 patients at work, whatever it is. I'm going to give you things that work. So let me tell you about Panax Ginseng. Panax Ginseng is sometimes called Korean ginseng, Asian ginseng, Chinese ginseng. It has to be grown for at least 5 years before it's rich enough in the ginsenosides that protect your brain and help your energy. What ginseng has been shown to do in the brain is protect the connections between the nerve tissue and your brain, your neurons, and keep the brain functioning. But it reduces fatigue. There's no doubt about it. there's a number of double-blind, placebo-controlled, randomized human clinical trials that when you give people who are really fatigued and stressed out this kind of ginseng, Panax Ginseng, it really helps them get their mental energy back and help them with stress. The symptoms of stress go away. I mean, you can't just get rid of your job, but you can get rid of the stress that the job engenders. So their brain is more energetic, they're calmer, they're more focused, their memory is improving, literally. You see this with Panax Ginseng. Physically, they have more energy. And the beauty of Panax Ginseng, it's also good for the immune system. It helps bring back the ability to fight infections like viruses. Because a lot of times when you're really burnt out, it's very easy to get sick. You're so stressed out, you're releasing all these stress hormones, you're physically exhausted. The immune system is just not working up to par. So there's quite a few studies published where the Panax Ginseng brings back mental and physical energy and gets rid of fatigue, gets rid of stress. The beauty of Panax Ginseng is it works almost the first day. That's the beauty of it. But then there's a completely different kind of ginseng. They call it Viking Ginseng. And the truth of the matter is, it's not really a ginseng, but it works just like ginseng. It's called Rhodiola rosea. If you follow where the Vikings traveled to, where they migrated to, you'll find Rhodiola rosea, Viking ginseng, growing there. You'll see it growing there. So like they went over towards Moscow and Siberia, you'll see it growing there. Up in Norway and Sweden and Denmark and Finland, you'll see it growing. The islands off of Scotland and Scotland itself, you'll see it growing. Ireland, it's growing in Ireland. The Vikings were in Ireland. And I mean, you go to Dublin, in historic Dublin, you'll see remnants of the Vikings. And of course, you'll see it in Iceland and you'll see it in northern Canada. Rhodiola grows in all these places because they brought it with them. And it's been studied in people who are burnt out, people with Burnout Syndrome. That was the Medical University of Vienna in Austria that did that. It was published in the journal Neuropsychiatric Disease and Treatment. Absolutely worked. Within a short amount of time, within the first week, these people had a great deal more energy. They were coping much better. They were feeling connected again. They were getting their emotional health back. They were getting interested in things again. It really had an impact on Burnout Syndrome. I mean, I actually take rhodiola frequently in the winter because it's also good for the immune system. And I work an awful lot of hours. I have a lot of things that I have to get accomplished, like on the radio shows and podcast episodes and creating supplements and a lot of stuff. So in the winter, when you add on the cold weather and all the viruses that are spreading, the colds and the flu, etc., I'll take rhodiola throughout the winter and it makes me feel much better. And I really don't get sick. Now, CBD is another one. CBD is actually rather amazing. CBD comes from the hemp plant. There used to be the marijuana plant where you got CBD and THC. Delta-9 THC is what people get high on at a Grateful Dead concert. This is different. It does not get you high. And they've found that they could divorce the plants. So now there's a hemp plant that doesn't get you high. It has CBD in it. So we got rid of all that THC stuff. And in a recent report at JAMA Network Open, JAMA is the Journal of the American Medical Association, during this pandemic, they're using CBD to healthcare workers to prevent burnout and emotional exhaustion. So it's published in JAMA Open Network. CBD is rather amazing. First of all, it does not get you high. It has nothing to do with marijuana. We are a licensed CBD retail outlet, so we have very high quality CBD. CBD stands for cannabidiol. It's from the hemp plant. But it's not just CBD. There's a whole bunch of ingredients in there, phytocannabinoids. Some of them are polyphenols, some of them are alkaloids. And these things work collectively. It's called an entourage effect, where they work much better. And CBD is much better absorbed if you take it with food. So CBD works because we have something called an endocannabinoid system all over our body. And what CBD does, it activates this endocannabinoid system. So in the brain, you have CB1 receptor sites. And what CBD does with its entourage effect, when you have all those phytocannabinoids in it, it stimulates the release of anandamide. Anandamide is from an old Sanskrit name. Over by India, they had the Sanskrit language in very ancient times. And it meant bliss. It was from the word anandam that meant bliss. And that takes place mostly in the brain. And in the body, there's CB2 receptor sites. The CBD causes the release of 2-arachidonyl glycerol. And by the way, these two substances that CBD triggers the release of, they come from omega-6 fatty acids. Omega-6 fatty acids you get in flaxseed, primrose oil, vegetable oils. So what CBD does, it slows down the degradation of these two wonderful hormonal type substances so they work better and for a longer time. So the 2-arachidonyl glycerol attaches the ligands, CB1 ligands in the brain. That just means receptor sites where it fits into, and CB2 ligands in the body. And it's involved with brain power. It's involved with memory. It's involved with calming down the brain. It's involved with, it has an anxiolytic effect. Anxiolytic means it gets rid of anxiety. So stress, you know what stress is. Anxiety is kind of a fear of a future event. Like people with anxiety syndromes, they might be afraid of leaving the house or crossing a bridge or something. So the 2-arachidonyl glycerol that's stimulated by CBD helps with stress, but it also helps with anxiety, and it helps with cognitive functions like paying attention. It reduces inflammation in your brain, but it also reduces inflammation in your body, like in your lungs and in your liver and in your kidneys and in your pancreas. And it helps with pain. It stimulates anti-nociceptive activities in the brain, so it works like an analgesic, like Advil or Aleve. So you can use the CBD because it's stimulating this arachidonyl glycerol to reduce pain in your joints or in your muscles. Now, the second thing it stimulates is really cool. It's anandamide. Anandamide comes from a word for divine happiness or joy or bliss or delight, that old Sanskrit word. It's really good for motivation and feeling pleasure because it affects CB1 receptor sites all over the brain, your reward circuitry. Now, these chemicals in the body that CBD causes the release of, and they hang around and work for a longer time and better, they affect the amygdala. And that could be where people suffer with post-traumatic stress disorder. That's where people feel fear, but that's also where people feel chronic pain. So even though these things are working in the brain at this point, although they do work in the body for pain also in your muscles and joints, they relieve pain throughout the body. For instance, if you have arthritis in your knee, you're not supposed to feel pain in your knee when you're sitting on the couch, because pain is a warning from the brain that don't do anything, you're going to hurt something further. Like if you break your leg, you're supposed to feel pain because it's supposed to tell you if you move it around, you're going to make the broken bone even worse. But once it's set in a cast, you're not supposed to have pain anymore. That's kind of learned pain in the amygdala, and the CBD helps get rid of that learned pain in the amygdala, so it helps with chronic pain. But it also helps with sharp pain, like muscle pain. And when you get the CBD, and it releases the anandamide in the brain that goes to the CB1 receptor sites, it's good for motivation. It's good for feeling pleasure. It's good for reducing anxiety and fear, improving feelings of happiness. But it also helps control your appetite. It's good for nausea. It's reducing pain. But it helps with neurogenesis, and this is something they only learned recently. Regular marijuana that people get high on is bad for your brain and bad for your memory. Where CBD, which comes from the hemp plant, which is now a completely different plant, it helps with neurogenesis, the creation of new neurons for your memory. And this helps critical thinking, orientation, being creative. So the CBD or the rhodiola or the Panax Ginseng, all of them can help with feeling burnt out. And there is one other thing. It comes from the green tea plant. It's called L-theanine. It's an amino acid that works on its own that helps reduce feelings of stress and nervousness, and it can help with creativity and focus and attention span. The problem is it doesn't help you get your energy back. You can add it onto these other things. You can mix and match these. It's very safe to mix CBD. CBD is totally non-toxic. It's safe to mix with the rhodiola or the Panax Ginseng. It's safe to mix the Panax Ginseng with the rhodiola. I do it all the time for people. And it's safe to add the theanine. I mean, it works very well, to be honest with you. So thank you for tuning into the Invite Health Podcast. You can find all of our episodes for free wherever you listen to podcasts, or just visit invitehealth.com/podcast. Please subscribe and leave us a review. You can also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Invite Health. Hope to see you next time on our next episode of the Invite Health Podcast. Thanks for listening, and this is Jerry Hickey signing off.